Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Turbo Omaha podcast. My name is Alex, and with me is my good buddy Shawn, a couple of lifelong friends and lifelong football fans talking about the current landscape of the NFL. Today, we wanted to talk about some of the free agents, some of the coaching changes. So why don't we go ahead and get into that, Shawn?
Let's do it.
Why don't we go ahead and start with some honorable mentions as far as free agents go?
Yeah, well, there's been a ton of news over the last few days. So we're coming at you at time of recording February 17th. So just today, there's been quite a bit of news in terms of some of the free agents that might not be free agents that might actually be released. So, honorable mentions, there's a lot of players that could definitely fit within a team, the right fit. One of my honorable mentions is going to be Sam Darnold. I have a lot of reservations on Sam Darnold right now, given that playoff game that he had, where he took 9 sacks for 83 yards. So there's certainly going to be some conversation on whether or not that was a lot of coaching, whether or not that was a lot of schemes, and Justin Jefferson, especially him going to another team. Raiders, I could certainly see. Browns are certainly a quarterback needy team. So I got Sam Darnold as one of my honorable mentions. Would not want him on my team. I don't need a quarterback for once in the last 15 years as a Denver Broncos fan. So that's nice to say and feel. I do also have, and this is going to be one that, is certainly looking more and more like a free agent. The more I've been looking around is Cardavius Ward from the 49ers. He is certainly any corner that can hold on to their receiver for more than just 3 to 4 seconds is going to be a massive addition to any team. Cough, cough, Bengals, who need some potential secondary help. That is certainly one of my. It's certainly someone I have my eye on. Hell, I'd like him in Denver as a potential, slot cover corner, but I just don't know if he has the speed. And then the last one that I actually just caught my eye recently as I was going back through some of the free agents that I didn't even realize was a free agent until earlier today. Najee Harris. You want to talk about a running back that has some quite a bit of upside if the Steelers don't keep him, going to a running back heavy team, Broncos. Certainly a free agent I'd love to see in Denver. But those would actually be some of my honorable mentions for free agents. So
I didn't realize Najee Harris was a free agent either, but I mean, he's posted 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons, but he's also averaging like 3.2 a carry. So, I mean, he's definitely not an explosive back by any means, but if you need 3 yards every play, it's not a bad pickup. As far as my honorable mentions go, I've got Jameis Winston. I don't think he's going to be a starter anywhere that he goes, but I think he could be an incredible morale boost wherever he goes. And that's, really any team could use that. Any and every team could use a good locker room presence and someone that they're happy to be around, even if he's a backup. I think potentially New England would be a good spot for him, just to kind of help Drake May learn a little bit, kind of boost morale after a really shitty season. So I think that would probably end up being a pretty good spot for him. I also have Justin Fields. I think he played very well in the games that he played. And I don't think the Steelers are going to retain him, which I think would end up being a mistake. But I don't know where else he would fit, really. That kind of style of quarterback play that he has works really well for the Steelers because they are a pretty run-heavy team. So a team that's got, a good running back and a good running quarterback as well kind of makes sense for him to stay there. But I don't really know of anywhere that he would fit quite as well as he would in Pittsburgh. And then it's not official yet, but Aaron Rodgers. He's not technically a free agent. He's not been cut. He's not been released, but it sounds like the Jets are going to move on from him. And there's a lot of QB needy teams that are willing to take that risk on him. He could go the full Brett Favre path and try to go to Minnesota, which would be hilarious. He could go somewhere like Cleveland, another QB needy team. Vegas. They're not Oakland anymore. I'm old. There's a lot of teams where he could fit in well and put up some decent numbers. So I think wherever he lands, if he chooses not to retire after his fucking 2-week long drug-induced darkness retreat, I think they're rolling the dice no matter what. I think he's not, obviously tore his Achilles, did not play 2 years ago, did not play very well this year. But, again, it's the Brett Favre path. Brett Favre was great for the Packers, took him to a Super Bowl, won MVPs. Aaron Rodgers did the same thing, went to New York, sucked it up, retired, unretired, went to the Vikings, played his ass off. So there's definitely a roll of the dice with Aaron Rodgers, but I mean, when we were practicing yesterday, you said it best. His resume is hard to deny. He's got a stacked resume filled with Super Bowl wins, Super Bowl MVPs, regular season MVPs. So there's a lot of teams that I think are willing to take that chance. I just don't know exactly who. Probably Vegas is my best landing spot for him.
You gave 3 quarterbacks for your honorable mentions.
I did. I think, if we're going not quarterback, I'd throw in Nick Bolton. But I think the Chiefs would be silly to not do what they can to keep him. He's a very, very good defensive player and has been well worth the money they've spent on him. So I think if they don't do whatever they can to keep him, that's just stupid.
If the Saints release Derek Carr, are you putting him above any of your 3 that you got?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. I would if it was, we don't have Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. I would take Jameis Winston over Derek Carr 100%. Yeah, sure, he's going to throw 40 interceptions, but he's going to throw 40 touchdowns too and 5,000 yards in the process on top of, that locker room's going to be pumped all the time. So Derek Carr is a fucking snoozer. He's beyond sunsetting. You look at Derek Carr and you wonder how much of it was, he was really that good or he had some good receivers. And even then it's not like he ever took the Raiders to like a fucking 13-4 season. They were 9-8. 10-7, maybe snuck into the wild card and get bounced in the first round. I would take Winston over Carr. Yeah,
that never even happened.
No, that's not true. They went to the playoffs because
didn't win.
No, that was the Bengals' first playoff win in 31 years. Was when we beat them in the wild card round in 2021. So
eat your heart out, Raider fans. Yep. You still can't tweet a Super Bowl or a playoff win. But man, if I'm Jameis Winston with all that press that I got and the Super Bowl and the love that I got, I don't know if I pursue NFL more, man. I got some good momentum going into a potential broadcasting career or podcast career, man. I don't know, but we'll definitely see.
Yeah, I think he does have a lot of good press going around him right now, but at the end of the day, he's still fairly young. He can still huck the ball pretty well, and I think he could still be more useful to a team even as a backup than it would be useful to himself to go off and be a broadcaster or something like that, because even if he goes on to be a broadcaster, broadcasters aren't signing, 2-year, $30 million deals unless you're fucking Tom Brady.
Tom Brady.
Exactly. Yep. So, Jameis Winston wouldn't be scoring a deal like Tom Brady. He's way better off just being a journeyman backup, being a good hype piece for a team for, the next 5-6 years, calling it quits and then go into broadcasting.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about our top 3 free agents. I think we both have one that we've mentioned on our list. In our honorable mentions for each other. But my number 3 free agent that I'd be pursuing is Khalil Mack. I think in today's NFL, edge rushing, quarterback containment is probably one of the most prestigious and needed positions right now. When you look at Lamar Jackson, when you look at Patrick Mahomes, when you look at all the quarterbacks, even the young ones, Bo Nix, there's so much movement right now in the pocket and outside of the pocket that if you can have somebody that can contain that edge, I think that's an unbelievable go get now type player. I am going to, however, slash this though, because there is potential rumor about Von Miller getting cut as a salary cap hit for the Buffalo Bills. He would easily be my third slot, but not as a general free agent because I firmly believe, and yes, there's a ton of bias in what I will say right now, in the fact that if Von Miller gets released, he's coming home. He'll have his farewell tour in Denver. He loves Denver. He's adamantly said that. He's kept Broncos and all of his stuff. He'll come home. I firmly believe. If the Bills do cut him or if he doesn't restructure his contracts, I could easily see Von Miller playing the same role that he played in Buffalo back in Denver. A strong leadership presence in the locker room, a former Super Bowl champion, Super Bowl MVP for the Broncos, come back and help some of our younger guys get that better mindset as we mature as a team. So I am going to slash that, but really any player that gets released over the next several weeks that has any sort of resume that comes to quarterback hits, quarterback pressure, sacks, that's going to be a commodity this free agent period.
Von Miller, I don't know if he was on a podcast or if he was just on like his Twitch stream or something, but he even said like, yeah, no, I'm going to finish my career in Denver. He's like, all these players did it, and I see why they did it. It's when I'm done, I'm going back to Denver. So I think you're right.
Yeah.
If the Bills don't want to take the cap hit and they let him go, yeah, I think he's probably going to end up back in Denver.
I think it's like a $17 million hit. And if they cut him, it goes down to 11 if he doesn't sign another deal. So, yeah, Nick Bonito, all of our pass rush could just learn and thrive with Vaughn.
Yeah. Not only one of the Broncos greats, but one of the greats to play the position. So that would be a big pickup for a lot of teams if that ends up to be what happens. As far as my number 3 pick goes, I'm staying in the same position. I'm going Zach Bond on mine from the Philadelphia Eagles. They just had him on a 1-year prove-it deal, and man, did he prove it. 151 tackles, 93 solo tackles, which I think tied him for third in the NFL. Only 3.5 sacks, but 5 forced fumbles is pretty big, and a fumble recovery. He was a huge piece in their defense all season long. He was an even bigger piece of their defense through their playoff and Super Bowl win. I think the Eagles are silly to not do everything they can to bring him back. I think he is a perfect fit in their scheme. But if they choose not to pursue him, I think the Bills is the best landing spot for him. Whether that means he's running in tandem with Von Miller or he's replacing Von Miller, I think that would be a phenomenal place for him to go. But yeah, like I said, I think kind of like Nick Bolton, the Eagles need to re-sign Zach Bond because he was so crucial for them in crunch time. Even if his regular season was like which it wasn't, the way he played in the playoffs, that's a player you keep. So I think, Zach Bond could be a pretty big target for a lot of teams, but Eagles need to do what they can to keep him.
It's going to be interesting with some of those because the Eagles have, I think, 3 or 4 big names that are coming off their contracts. And are they going to stay in Philadelphia to run it back, or with that Super Bowl champion in the resume, are they going to pursue a big deal? Because another team, one of my good buddies will be on the podcast one of these days. It's a big 49er fan, and the 49ers are out there pursuing somebody to be alongside Nick Bosa. So I think they could potentially be a target as well for any one of these pass rushing free agents that are on the board. So, number 2 I got was one of your honorable mentions, and Aaron Rodgers. Again, the resume, he will go down as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think the argument of where he stands in the ever argument of top 10 quarterbacks of all time is tarnished right now with his inability to go to another team and have any success, like Peyton Manning going and winning a championship in Denver, Tom Brady doing it for the Bucks. So I do think Aaron Rodgers runs it back. I think he's too arrogant to leave the way that he left off in New York. There were reports coming out today about him pleading to stay with the Jets, and you don't know how much that is. It could have just been him saying, "Hey, I can still win for you guys. Why are you letting me go?" kind of thing. I don't think he was on all fours begging for them not to cut him like some of the reports are coming out saying. I don't think that's the case, but
Certainly not Aaron Rodgers. He wouldn't do some shit
not
like
Aaron
that.
Rodgers. But his definite mushroom whatever drugs he's going to take for his wellness retreat, darkness retreat, whatever retreat. If he does come back, he should be a top target for some of these teams like the Vikings. And again, it's a meme for him to go to the Vikings, but right now today it makes sense. In that playoff game, they were a quarterback away from progressing forward. Sam Darnold shit the bed. Let's call it what it was. You put Aaron Rodgers in there, maybe he does better, maybe he doesn't. He's getting old, but I don't know if he'd go to a team like Cleveland. That's another team that could potentially benefit from a 1 to 2 season with some of the pieces they have if they can keep Myles Garrett. But Aaron Rodgers, you can't deny the resume. He's got to be in the conversation of some of the best free agents right now if he decides to stay.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the Vikings would be better off putting off JJ McCarthy and bringing in a veteran, or do you think you go through the hard years right now, if there even is any? Because I mean, you look at someone like Bo Nix, who came in, struggled at first, but led the Broncos to the playoffs. He had a fantastic season. So you could get something like that with JJ McCarthy, or you could get a real rough season out of him. So
Yeah.
do you think the Vikings are better off going with a veteran and trying to develop McCarthy behind the scenes, or do you just rip the Band-Aid off and throw McCarthy in?
I think a lot of it depends on his health, right? I think he had a full meniscus tear, or I don't know if it was an ACL.
I think it was meniscus.
So
I think you're right.
yeah. I think a lot of it depends on his health. But at the same time, you look at somebody like Aaron Rodgers or even Tom Brady. They didn't start immediately. They sat underneath Drew Bledsoe or Brett Favre. So would Aaron Rodgers play the role of mentor? Maybe, maybe not. And if he did, I think that's only going to help JJ not only get healthy, learn the NFL speed, because that's essentially next season going to be his rookie year. He didn't play a single snap in the NFL for a regular season game.
Yeah.
So next season is essentially his rookie year. He doesn't know the speed. He doesn't know the pacing. He doesn't know the conditioning. He doesn't know how to read the field quickly yet. So if I were leading the Vikings, I would go after another veteran quarterback to kind of bridge that gap, but we'll have to see what they decide. You're right with Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels went in and blew expectations out of the water.
Yeah.
But you look at somebody like Drake May or Caleb Williams who didn't do so hot. So what position do you want to put your rookie in? I don't know.
I think it's tough to say either way too, because he's not going to get an NFL snap until you rip the Band-Aid off. He's not going to know the speed and aggression of the game until he gets some snaps, which ties perfectly into my number 2 pick for free agent, Sam Darnold. I think it's a weird spot Sam Darnold's in, considering the crushing playoff loss that they had. He played so well during the season that it's hard not to justify a QB needy team going after him. Now, is he worth the $40 million a year price tag that people are setting on him? No, not at all. But 4,300 yards, 66% completion percentage, pretty good. 35 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, and a season average 102.5 passer rating. Pretty damn good, if you ask me. Those are good numbers. Now, how much of that is Sam Darnold finally came into his own and broke out of his shell, and now he's ready to go, versus he was in Kevin O'Connell's scheme, which is, I mean, Kevin O'Connell's one of the best head coaches in the NFL. So QB needy teams are going to go after him. I think he's going to find himself as a starter somewhere. I just don't know where. I think maybe the New York Giants would be a good spot for him to land. Having someone like Malik Neighbors, definitely not Justin Jefferson by any means, but Malik Neighbors has shown that he's pretty damn talented and a good receiver. And when the Giants' current options are Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito, Darnold sounds pretty good compared to those options. But again, the Giants just made a $40 million a year mistake in Daniel Jones that didn't even last a full season before they cut him, and he went, funny enough, to the Vikings. So I think Sam Darnold is going to be an important piece somewhere, but how well he's going to play is still kind of up in the air. Like I said,
Yeah.
we won't know for sure if this was the Sam Darnold breakout year or if this was Sam Darnold fell into the right situation at the right time and took advantage of it, and things could get
Yeah.
worse from there. So
Yeah, because you look at the roster. I mean, of course, Justin Jefferson, but they got Jordan Addison, they got Aaron Jones, T.J. Hawkinson. Like they had so many big names. So if you're looking at Sam Darnold, and yeah, he had a he had a good team around him. What team would you even put him on that has similar pieces that could mirror what he had, and also the coach of O'Connell?
yeah, I mean, I still think the Giants is probably his best bet. Dable, I think, is a good coach, as is evident by the fact that he led that team and Daniel Jones to the playoffs 2 years ago, in which I mean, it seems like we're talking about the Vikings a lot, in which they beat the Vikings in the first round. I don't think Daniel Jones is better than Sam Darnold. And if Dable can do it with Jones, I think he can do it with Darnold. They've got a
Yeah.
couple of young pieces, Defense seems to be where I think their stronger point is. But, I mean, if Malik Neighbors can have the Jamar Chase effect where they're always doubling him, and then they've got some young kid in the slaughter running wide receiver too that gets open because Malik's being doubled, maybe they can create another household name out of that.
Yeah. We'll have to see on him.
Yeah.
He was an honorable mention for me, but yeah, I don't know.
I think his season was too good to keep him at
Ignore.
honorable mention. Yeah, yeah. Like I said,
Yeah.
and again, we don't know how much of that is from coaching versus he
Yeah.
just flourished. But I think regardless, wherever he lands up, it's going to be pretty interesting to see.
Yeah. Let's talk number one. Our number one's the same. However, again, today, February 17th, some news came out. All the news outlets in the NFL are starting to report that the Bengals are considering and are leaning towards franchise tagging both of our number one uh, free agent targets in T. Higgins. So I'll, of course, talk about T. Higgins in the sense of him being a free agent, and you'll, of course, talk about him in the sense of yet another second year straight franchise tag. um, Denver needs another wide receiver. It's funny. Pro Football Focus or one of the news outlets, I don't know, is PFF, but actually had Cortland Sutton as the number 3 wide receiver in the NFL, which I thought was interesting. Um, I don't know that I agree with that, even as a Bronco fan. He is damn good. He was a solid safety net for uh, Bo Nix last season in the playoff game in the Bills. It was bad. We got wrecked, but he had some crucial drops early that could have kept the game closer and not let it run away from us. Denver needs another big name wide receiver. We'll talk about top trade targets, and one of my top trade targets, and one of the things I really want to see in Denver next year, spoiler alert, Garrett Wilson, is a potential trade target. But when we're talking free agency, T. Higgins is my number one go to. However, you always ask the question of the Jamar Chase effect, like you were mentioning. We saw it in San Francisco with the Debo effect on Brandon Ayuk, who sat out the entire um, uh, preseason and summer camp, and then came back, was real rusty, and then got injured for the rest of the year. So, do you pay a guy like T. Higgins just to find out that he was really only getting open and getting the targets that he did because of Jamar Chase? We don't know until he comes up. So, if it's true with the conversation about this franchise tag, which I know you got plenty of thoughts there, Alex, on that one. I'm looking at a Chris Godwin as a really good name to potentially fit that slot for Denver. Again, I'm really focused on Denver because I think we're going to be the ones that are really going to go out and get a wide receiver, I hope. Stephon Diggs is a free agent this year as well, coming off an injury, getting older, didn't quite have the impact that we would have hoped that he had in for the Texans. So, a little lower on that. But um, if this rumor is false with the franchise tag, let's go T. Higgins in Denver. But on the note of the franchise tag, has the Bengal fan, how do you feel about that, Alex?
I'm disappointed in it simply because just fucking pay the man. He has proved time and time again that he wants to be here. He said he'll take less money to stay in Cincinnati because he loves it there, because his home's there, because his family's there. Like it's where he wants to be. Um, I'm still going to look at this through the lens of he's a free agent. While it is expected that the Bengals are going to franchise tag him, still nothing official has happened yet. So I'll still look at this through the lens of him being a free agent. Assuming that is the case, Bengals, fucking pay the man, dude. Like, what? Yeah. Even, and I mean, you were saying, how much of that is T. Higgins was really just getting open on his own versus the Jamar Chase effect. But 2 years ago, I want to say, Jamar Chase missed 5 or 6 games with a back injury, and T. Higgins fucking carried. He was fantastic, and opposite him was fucking Trent Irwin. So
big name.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like T. Higgins was. It's not like opposing defenses were like, oh, yeah, double up T, but keep an eye on Irwin. No, they were doubling up T because he was the only big hands on the field, and he was still making plays. I think it proves that he is capable, more than capable, of being a wide receiver 1 in just about any franchise. And I think the Bengals are lucky enough to have 2 wide receiver 1s and one that loves the city and the franchise enough that he's willing to not take as much money just to be there. So, like I said, 73 receptions, 911 yards, 10 touchdowns. Fantastic numbers for a wide receiver, too. And that was with missing, I want to say, 3 or 4 games this year with some hamstring injuries. So if he played the full 17 games, 1, who knows if the Bengals would have still managed to make the playoffs. 2, those numbers would have only been better. Having 73 receptions, 900 yards, and 10 touchdowns when your wide receiver 1 on your team won the fucking Triple Crown, those are phenomenal numbers. So it's not like Joe Burrow was specifically like, oh, Jamar and Jamar only. T was putting up numbers. So, yeah, as a Bengals fan, I don't want to even think about the possibility of him not being there, regardless if it's franchise tag or if it's we pay him outright, whatever it is. T has been one of my favorite players since he entered the league. And I would love for him to stay there. And, Joe Burrow's been doing the circuit right now of podcasts and other news outlets saying that he's willing to restructure his contract. He's willing to do this, that, and the other. Everyone wants to stay together and that the Bengals front office can do it. And I think really more than anything at the end of the day, the Bengals front office just needs to spend some fucking money. We are one of the dirt cheapest franchises in the NFL. I mean, look at the Saints. They are like negative 60 mil in cap space, and that's not stopping them from spending more money and getting other players. Yeah. That's not stopping them from drafting rookies and signing them to rookie deals. We've got a decent amount of cap space. It's not fantastic. I don't think we have the most in the NFL by any means, but we've got enough to pay our players, to pay these key guys and keep them, and even add some pieces that we need, like the secondary. That's something that we're struggling with really, really bad. Dax Hill has showed some promise, but tearing his ACL in week 3 or 4, we lost him for the year. And with Von Bell being the next best option, he's, lost his step. He's not as good for us this time around as he was the first time around. So I think really all it comes down to is the Bengals front office just not being such fucking cheapskates and doling out some bans to keep these key pieces in place.
It's just interesting because, for one, you never know behind closed doors are the players saying this for good PR, right? So we never really know what's going on behind closed doors, but we've talked about it before. It's just a gigantic percentage of your cap going into 3 guys because T deserves the money. Jamar Chase undeniably deserves the money. And even if Joey B puts his contract a little bit lower, that's still a significant percentage. But one thing I wanted to point out to you is the last notable time a player has been tagged twice. Do you have any idea who that might be?
No, I have no idea.
Le'Veon Bell, 2017 and 2018. He was tagged back to back. In 2018 with the Steelers. He sat out. He did not play. Then became a free agent in 2019, and Le'Veon Bell just kind of after that sailed off into the sunset. So it'll be, T already sat out summer camp and preseason for y'all. He knows
T was there all through summer camp and preseason. It was Jamar who sat out.
It was Jamar.
Jamar sat out because he wanted to extend his contract, even though really they shouldn't have started looking at an extension until this year. That's standard rookie. You sign them to a 5-year deal. After 4, you re-sign them. But Jamar wanted to get it done sooner, and at the time, I was pissed. I was like, "Come on, dude, just play ball. We don't need to go through all of this." Looking back now, hindsight 2020, we should have done it then because now we have to pay him
Now
big
you're
time.
screwed.
If we did it
Triple
last
crown
year,
money.
we would have signed him way, way cheaper than we're going to have to do this year. So,
Because look at what we did in Denver. We extended Pat Surtain earlier this season. If we waited, he would have just gotten Defensive Player of the Year. His money went up.
yep,
So
yep.
difference in owners. We got that Walmart money to waste over here in Denver.
Yeah, no,
So
we got fucking Mike Brown and his fucking
yeah.
crusty, shitty underpants.
But hey, let's talk a little bit about trade targets. So trading is definitely something that happens in the NFL. It's not NBA. We're probably not going to see any dumbass trades like the Lakers getting rid of Anthony Davis, who's probably going to be out for the foreseeable future for one of the biggest stars we've seen in Luka Doncic. We're probably not going to see trades like this, but there's certainly some targets out there that are worth consideration for the trade target destinations. I'm gonna mix this up a little bit on you too, and I'm gonna hit you a little in a soft spot because we forgot to mention on the last. So for our viewers, this is the third time we've recorded this one. We did just a practice to test the audio and the video, and then the second time we did it, we had a video recording issue. But I want to throw a little curveball at you because we unfortunately know Sam Hubbard for your Bengals has talked about getting out of there, asking for a trade.
Jermaine
has that
Pratt.
changed? Is it Jermaine Pratt?
It was Jermaine Pratt who was asking for
Okay.
a trade, which
Okay.
I'm not super happy with. I think Jermaine Pratt has been really solid for us. He's not been this standout star that's like, defensive player of the year caliber player, but he's been reliable and he's been solid. But I think I'm less worried about that because we had to put him into more of a spotlight this year because Logan Wilson got hurt. Logan Wilson will be back next year. He has been great for us. Logan Wilson was the one who forced the fumble versus the Ravens in that playoff game 2 years ago that Sam Hubbard then took 99 yards to the house. Logan Wilson has been a pretty key piece for us. I think we do probably need to look if Jermaine Pratt wants out, maybe we look into another middle linebacker somewhere of his caliber, just so that way Logan Wilson's not playing every fucking defensive snap. But yeah, I'm bummed because I like Jermaine Pratt, and I want to say we just signed him last offseason to like another 2 or 3 year deal or something like that. So to go one season and then one out, is tough, but also at the same time,
Sucks.
a little bit understandable because the Bengals had one of the best offenses in the NFL and one of the worst defenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest reasons we missed the playoffs. So to want to go somewhere where maybe there's not so much pressure on you to perform as well as your offense is, I get it.
So let me throw this one at you, Alex. I put Sam Hubbard down for a reason. He's on his last year of his deal. He's to be paid $40 million this year. His productivity has dropped. He only had about 6.3% pass rush this season. So it's been declining. And I still think that edge rushing is one of the hottest commodities right now. But knowing what we just talked about of your stingy ass owners and your need to clear up space to pay these guys, are you willing to trade away a guy like Sam Hubbard, clear up that 40 mil, give him to somebody that has that extra cap space to potentially? We know the Bengals need that defense because they let you down, but could this save the offense that has rescued you so many times? Are you making that trade if you own the Bengals today?
Probably yes. I would say yes, simply because we have Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks, defensive player of the year nominee.
We just talked about all those guys that are free agents that you could potentially bring in for less money, clear up a big name like Sam Hubbard. I know you just talked about his touchdown, fumble recovery, be a hard one to swallow. That it's 28 years old, going into 40 million next year. That can clear y'all up some cash for maybe paying T and not making him play on a franchise tag again.
Yeah, I think That's one of those, like, it's a business at the end of the day, and the decision isn't easy, but I think the Bengals would be smart to unload him, maybe get some draft capital, maybe get another player of slightly lesser value than him to plug and play for the time being.
Yeah.
But I think yes. I think yes, simply because we have a lot of other pieces around, like Trey Hendrickson, like Logan Wilson, like Dax Hill, that we can kind of piece some things together. Like you said, Sam Hubbard's productivity has been definitely going down a little bit, but he's still it's like Jamar and T, but on defense. If you double up Trey, Sam's going to break through the line and he's going to get that sack. So it's tough to say, like, we don't need him, because we definitely do. But I think with his productivity going down, I think he just injured his knee. I want to say he tore his MCL or something like that, catching a touchdown pass in a trick play. I think coming off an injury like that, wanting that much money, productivity going down, all of that equates to, we make the best out of the situation. We trade him. We get something decent in return, whether that, like I said, that's draft capital or another player. And I think we're going to ask a lot of Trey Hendrickson if that's the case. But I think he can handle it. So,
A reasonable Bengals fan. Love it.
I try to be. I think that's what makes this experience with us so much better, is that I will die on the hill of Bengals. They will always be my favorite team. Any sport, any whatever. I fucking bleed orange. But at the same time, I'm realistic, and I know you are too with the Broncos.
Yeah, I just have some hate to some teams that ours is unrealistic. So do you, which we'll get to in one of the next few episodes.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, it's being realistic that makes football more fun to watch, because I can't tell you how many times over the last 4 years before game day Sunday you would text me and just be like, man, sure don't want to fucking watch Russell Wilson go out there. So, I mean, the realisticness of knowing what you need to do as a franchise, or, because most fans are just like, no, just go out and get this guy and trade for this guy and do this. Fuck it, trade 10 years of first round picks and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, be a little bit realistic, It's Sam Hubbard's been a big piece for us, but at the same time, he could end up being a bigger piece for us in terms of whatever capital he can bring in if we choose to trade him.
Yeah. Who you got in your number 3?
As far as trades, honestly, I haven't been keeping too much with potential trades. One I did see that I think is interesting, and this is totally just a rumor. I don't have any sort of basis on this, but again, rumor, is that the Steelers are eyeballing Trevor Lawrence. That would be probably a really, really smart move by the Steelers. Lawrence, obviously coming off an injury, coming off a not such a great season. But he, before that, had a couple of pretty good seasons with the Jaguars, made them playoff team, made that incredible comeback versus the Chargers in the wild card round. Almost, I mean, hell, they almost beat the Chiefs. It was, what was the final score of that one? Like 27-24 or something in the divisional. Like they kept it close.
Yeah.
I think that would be really, really smart of the Steelers. Don't do the same thing you've always done. Don't go out and get some fucking vet on his last leg and hope that you can plug and play for a season or two and make the playoffs and then lose in the wild card round like you have for the last 10 years. Get someone young, get someone fresh. I think, Trevor Lawrence in Pittsburgh as a Bengals fan is fucking horrifying. But as a football fan, I think that is easily the best landing spot for him if the Jaguars choose to trade him. I don't think they will. They just gave him that massive contract, and he's played pretty damn well for them. But, if the Steelers offer, Justin Fields and 2 first-round picks or something, that's hard to say no to. That's hard to say no to.
The Jags do hold the number 5 pick, so they're high. The Trevor Lawrence, I think he was out a couple of games this last season. I know he got destroyed by that Texans safety or linebacker, can't think of his name. That was a gruesome hit.
Yeah.
But Trevor Lawrence was on Up and Adams today, and he did make the comment of, I have a no trade clause in my contract, so I would know about it if I was getting traded or if that was something that was going to happen. I'd have to be on board with it, which I'm not. I'm happy here in Jacksonville. I plan on it. I want to win a Super Bowl here, and I think we can do it, and I don't want to leave Jacksonville. So I'm happy here. Obviously, I'm not going to Pittsburgh. of course, it's like all the Joey B press. It's all the Von Miller press about Denver, which his is a bit extreme. I think we can both agree with that, with his
Yeah.
love still for Denver. But, how much of these comments that these players make is their PR people saying, nope, let's keep it down low because you never know. But no, I've seen that too. And I think that, yeah, I would be scared too. But yeah, I don't know. That was a very interesting rumor that popped up.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, it makes sense. I think scheme wise, I think youth wise, player wise, I think he would be a phenomenal fit in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
And I mean, like I said, you trade 2 first round picks and Justin Fields to the Jaguars, and the Jaguars limp along with Justin Fields for a season or two. Who knows? Maybe Justin Fields goes over there and he fucking pops off and he takes them to the playoffs,
yeah,
and it worked out well for everyone. Or,
yeah,
again, and like you said, this could just be, his PR team telling him, hey, try to hush these rumors a little bit,
yeah.
something like that. But, yeah, that one, like I said, just a
It's
rumor.
interesting.
I don't think it would actually happen, but it's one of those that it's like, it makes sense.
It'd be a shocker. It'd be a bit of
Yeah.
a shocker.
Yeah.
But in my number two trade target, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about because I kind of gave a little spoiler to it. Is Garrett Wilson. I'm looking at my boys in blue, the Broncos again. I would give up a first for Garrett Wilson. Maybe not this year's first. Maybe if they'd take maybe this year's second, next year's first or something. I don't know. But I mean, Garrett Wilson, rookie of the year. Uh, what, 3 seasons ago, 2 seasons ago?
2, I
Um,
think. Yeah.
yeah. So can't deny a guy like that. The Broncos just got rid of their assistant GM to go run the Jets organization. So we got a little friend over there. So maybe there'll be some, more trade talks. It's all about who you know in Denver, or excuse me, it's all about who you know in the NFL. And when you got connections like that, who knows what could happen. But I've said my spiel about Denver and our needs, but just any team for Garrett Wilson, I think, is a solid hit. Could really lift a team. And the Jets are rebuilding. If they're getting rid of Aaron Rodgers, you know, maybe clean up more and really rebuild that team up a little bit. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I'm going to throw someone at number 2, it's going to be someone beneficial to the Bengals. And as we've said a couple of times, our secondary is torched. I think Christian Gonzalez is someone we should pursue. Granted, he's played so well, I don't think New England's going to let him go. But with our secondary being as battered and bruised as it is, Dax Hill being serviceable but not a superstar, on top of coming off of an injury, I think someone young, fast, with some great coverage like him, I think that would be a huge boost to our secondary, which is something we desperately need.
you
I
do
gotta I
have
gotta imagine number 1 is gonna be the same for both of us again.
Garrett Wilson.
Oh, Garrett Wilson was your number 1. I thought it was your number 2.
Or I'm sorry, not Garrett Wilson. Miles Garrett. Two
Miles
Garretts.
Garrett. Yep.
Miles Garrett. Yeah.
Miles Garrett would be my number 1 as well.
Yeah, for any team, you think about next to Trey Hendrickson, you think about the 49ers next to Nick Bosa, you think about Denver next to Nick Bonito. I mean, there are so many teams that can flourish by having a guy like Nick Bosa there. The other, or not Nick Bosa, I'm sorry, Miles Garrett. But you think about the other Bosa brother, Joey Bosa. There's even been some conversation about him on the trade block. I wouldn't put him in a number 1 situation whatsoever. Some bias because I can't stand the Chargers, or Nick Bosa for that matter. How many times he's gotten on my nerves can get into our quarterback. But yeah, I certainly think we probably got the same number 1. And I mean, he's always in the conversation for defensive player of the year, like TJ Watt. So I'm talking to the Browns if I'm a GM, and I've seen in places people calling out Deshaun Watson as a trade target, and I'm like, no, he screwed up his Achilles injury. He's not going to play next season, so there's nobody that's going to trade for him and pick up that worst contract in NFL history. Thank God that happened, so the Broncos can be out of that conversation. But Miles Garrett, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Miles Garrett, it's every single franchise could use him. There's no franchise in the NFL that's like, oh, we don't need Miles Garrett. No, if you are a team in the National Football League, you want and you need Myles Garrett. I mean, that dude is an absolute fucking beast maniac. I've watched him tear us up for years now. He's an unbelievable talent. He's just a fucking specimen of athleticism. Um, every single NFL team should be doing what they can to pursue him, and I think
Yeah.
that's good for the Browns because they need to recoup some money and they need to back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
I heard one columnist who was saying that he was urging the Browns to make sure they include Deshaun Watson as like a package deal. Like, oh, if you want to trade for Myles Garrett, then you got to take Deshaun Watson too.
Ugh,
Not a fucking
that's not
because
gonna
if
happen.
that's the case, Myles Garrett will probably sit out. No one will take Deshaun Watson, and now the Browns are back to fucking square one with
Yeah.
neither of those people. So I think, you know, my hatred for Cleveland is not nearly as deep as that of Pittsburgh and Baltimore. But Cleveland needs to offload him and get some major fucking capital out of it, especially draft capital. Like I said, he's one of those guys that, any team could offer 2 firsts and a second or something like that for him.
Yeah.
Like he's that caliber of player that you could just basically a blank check and say, here, what do you want? And it's almost worth it. So,
It's easy for you not to hate the Browns because they've been ass for your entire life.
even when they were good, when they had Baker Mayfield and they made it to the playoffs, I rooted for them. Granted, that's because they were playing the Steelers, and I would rather see the Browns win than the Steelers.
Oh, yeah.
But the Browns are kind of like that feel-good story. If you ever see them play well enough to make it to the playoffs, I'm still secretly like, yeah, you go Browns. Like it's like the Lions, it's like the Commanders. You want to see these teams that have been historically awful. You want to see them make a playoff run just because it's memorable. It's a fun experience. So I don't hold too many grudges with Cleveland, and again, that is mostly because they fucking sucked for a really long time, so I don't have to worry too much about them. But yeah, I think it's time to hit the reset button in Cleveland. You offload Garrett, you get as much draft capital as possible, and you continue your 40-year-long rebuild.
Yeah. What's interesting is a couple points. First, love what you said about the Browns and them needing to offload. I've been to a ton of Bronco games. One of the most annoying experiences I had was with a bunch of Browns fans. They were obnoxious, barking at us when they were winning. And when they started losing, my dad and I were barking back at them. Like literally, they would bark. Of course, dog pound, all that. They were very salty about that, and they did not like that very much whatsoever. But another point that I didn't know about Myles Garrett is he does not have a no trade clause in his contract. So if the Browns do decide to let him go, they could get a decent deal out of him to a team that's really needy. And it might not be good for Miles because I know he wants to go somewhere where he can win, but they could send him somewhere like Jacksonville or the Giants that, he might not have a chance to win. And that would suck for, somebody like Myles Garrett who has, potentially some Hall of Fame conversations happening with him.
Yeah.
So
I think the team that should absolutely pursue him the most right now is the Commanders. Commanders are coming off a hot season. You've got yourself a phenomenal young quarterback. You've got yourself some weapons on offense. Your defense wasn't horrible, but it wasn't spectacular. And bolstering that defense with Myles Garrett, I think almost automatically makes them Super Bowl contenders. If they were able to make it to the NFC Championship game, pretty much on the back of Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, you add Myles Garrett to that mix.
defensive pieces.
Yeah, I think their odds to go to and win the Super Bowl skyrocket. So if I'm any franchise owner in the NFL, Commanders, you guys need to make a serious push for that because that instantly puts you guys into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, there were certainly some hot teams this year and some surprises. I mean, Denver made the Super Bowl for the first time since Peyton Manning. You just mentioned Washington. Playoffs, yeah. Wishful thinking. What I said isn't false, but hey, there were 7 teams that said, "Hey, we're done. We don't want you coaching our teams anymore," and they picked up some new head coaches. So when I think about so we're going to talk about best situations and worst situations, and let's just start off with worst. My wife is a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, so of course you support your significant other, and I've become quite alert to the Cowboys and everything that they've been doing over the last 12, 13, 14 years. Longer. Some other friends have been Cowboys fans as well. So um, they decided to go with Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach for 2025. It's the fact that they just decided to get rid of God, who's their old coach? I forgot last time. Um,
McCarthy.
Yeah, getting rid of McCarthy, which the conversation at the time is, hey, we're gonna extend you, and then all of a sudden, like overnight, it turned into, yep, we're getting rid of him. And at that point, there wasn't any hires going on. The Cowboys brought in Kellen Moore for an interview, and I think that was it from an outside interview perspective. They did not bring anybody else in, and just was decided to boost up Brian Schottenheimer. Now, I know we're going to talk about worse situations in a number of different aspects in terms of roster, culture, players, etc. But when you go and try to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, quote unquote, America's football team, you immediately have a larger spotlight on you than any other coaching situation in the NFL. So when you're this, let's be honest, kind of a no-name guy that got brought up kind of out of nowhere, you're still going to have that light on you, especially now that the Dallas Cowboys are the last team in the NFC to ever make the NFC Championship game. The Cowboys fans are passionate, maybe somewhat unrealistic. Luckily, my wife is a very passionate fan, but she is realistic. She knows the writing on the wall this season of out of nowhere coach, Dak coming off an injury. There even talks about some trades. I don't want to put some rumors out there that are unconfirmed, but some big name trades that could potentially happen in Dallas. So it's interesting. And they're talked about bringing people in for an interview. There was a quote unquote phone call apparently to Deion Sanders, which
Yeah, I did hear about
I
that.
don't I don't know if he would really fit in an NFL organization, especially a Jerry Jones NFL organization. So I'm glad that didn't happen. I love having Dion here in Colorado. But that is my worst head coaching situation for 2025. I don't expect the Cowboys to um, maybe get to close to 500 this year, but that's just such a tough place to be a head coach of because you're not the head coach. You're Jerry Jones' assistant. And until such time where Jerry Jones decides to actually relinquish control of his team to let somebody run it, maybe get them some success, Cowboys are going to be where they are today. Nowhere.
Brian Schottenheimer, is he related to Marty Schottenheimer? Is
I
his
think
son or
so.
something? Because
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
Marty Schottenheimer was a pretty prolific coach uh, for the Chargers, I believe, is where he was at for a long time. He was a great coach.
Redskins as well.
Yep.
Yeah, Marty. He was head coach of Browns, Redskins, Chargers, and Chiefs.
Chargers is where I
Um,
remember him most because that's where my sort of NFL consciousness was starting to come into play. But he did pretty great for them. So, maybe it runs in the blood. It's like Shanahan. Um, Kyle
yeah,
Shanahan, I think, was an initial like, we don't know, we'll kind of give it a shot. And I mean, he's become one of the best offensive play callers and head
yeah.
coaches. So you never know. It could be something like that. He's got some good pieces to work with, if assuming they, nobody leaves, they keep everyone. You've got Dak Prescott, you've got CD Lamb, you've got Micah Parsons, you've got a good core to build around. I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right in that no matter who they hired as head coach, that's Jerry Jones making the calls, pulling
Yeah.
the strings, and you're just kind of his assistant until further notice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think no matter who they signed, that would have been the case. So I think it's
Yeah.
better for the Cowboys to have sort of hired from within and just give some no name a shot because they know that that's the case. So I think it's not a fantastic situation he's in, but I don't think the worst. I think the worst pretty easily goes to Kellen Moore in New Orleans. He is coming off of a fantastic season as an offensive coordinator for the Eagles, but who wouldn't be coming off of a fantastic season as an offensive coordinator for the Eagles when you have arguably one of the best offensive lines of all time? You have Saquon Barkley, you have Jalen Hurts, you have AJ Brown, you have Devontae Smith. It's kind of hard to fuck up as an offensive coordinator when you have that core. So I think Kellen Moore is going to come into New Orleans, negative 60 mil in cap space, next to no like big names. You've got Derek Carr, who, I mean, if they're lucky, they're going to move on from. Taysom Hill, who they've already said they're going to move on from. Chris Olave, who can't stop getting injured. I think Kellen Moore's going to come in, and I think Saints fans are going to be excited, and they're going to see like, oh, that's the offensive coordinator who just won the Super Bowl. I think he's going to come in and he's going to flop bad. I think like so bad. My guess is Saints are going to be biting for a number 1 pick next year.
Yeah. Don't forget Kellen Moore had the tush push as well.
Yeah,
if they're going to get rid of
yeah,
Taysom Hill, that could have been somebody that potentially could have ran something similar.
yeah,
Derek Carr ain't
absolutely.
doing that.
No,
I
Derek
don't
Carr's
think
not
their
doing
line's
that.
doing that.
And you know, even if you cut Derek Carr, you save some money. Who are you going to go for? You've got a decently high draft pick. Do you go for someone like Cam Ward? Do you go for someone like Jackson Dart? Do you hope that that's the future of your franchise? You're putting a lot of pressure on a guy who made his job look easy because he had one of the best offenses in recent memory. So I think he's walking into a shit show. I'm guessing, like I said, they're gonna go really bad next year. We're looking at a 2-15, 3-14 type season, pulling for a number 1 overall pick. And assuming that's the case, I think Kellen Moore is going to be one and done. I think he's going to get 1 year out there, and he's going to flop miserably, and he's going to get his ass kicked out with his tail between his legs. Yeah. He's going to go back to be an offensive coordinator somewhere, and he'll be just fine there.
Yeah, I think the same for Brian Schottenheimer, one and done.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about your best? So for me, I'm going Ben Johnson for the Bears. I think the Bears have a lot of hope that Caleb Williams can be what they hope that he can be. I know they added Ryan Poles, Roma Dunze, a couple other coaches that can surround Ben Johnson with the pieces that he wants to help Caleb Williams potentially grow to be what he wants to be. But man, I also think there's a tremendous amount of pressure there too. Caleb Williams coming off being sprouted as the best QB prospect to ever come out of college, and didn't quite see that at times over the course of last season. So I think there's a lot of pressure there to come in, take Caleb Williams, mold him quickly to be what they want him to be. But I think they got some pieces there. They won 4 of their last 6. Could have been 5 of the last 6 if there wasn't a weird timeout issue from their old coach. I won't get into that, but I think just from a fit perspective and getting Caleb Williams the help that he needs from a coaching perspective is why I'm going to put Ben Johnson up there for my best situation.
And see, Ben Johnson for me is almost borderline, to me at least, in the worst situation, not because of the players and coaches that surround him, but because of the pressure. They are going to ask a lot from him, and Chicago fans are fucking ruthless. If he doesn't come in and make some sweeping changes immediately, they're going to call for his head. And I mean, that's the job of an NFL coach. You know, if you don't come in and fucking turn everything on its tail and make this a playoff contending team, they're going to call for your head. But Chicago's got that worse than just about anyone. So I think Ben Johnson's coming into a lot of pressure. And like you said, he's got some phenomenal pieces around him in terms of coaching staff, in terms of players. He's got a good system to build around, but that's a lot of pressure to put on someone.
It is.
And for that exact reason, I think my best coaching situation is kind of is like your free agents. I'm going to put a slash on it. I think Mike Vrabel has got a great situation going on in New England. Granted, he's a little bit more of a defensive-minded head coach in a very offensive-forward league. That could be exactly what the Patriots need. He was a Patriot for a long time. He turned Tennessee from fucking nobodies into Super Bowl contenders with Ryan Tannehill at the helm. And now you've got Drake May, who, granted, he didn't have the best season last year. They had the worst offensive line in the NFL. Drake May was running for his life every play, and he still showed flashes of brilliance and still showed that he could definitely be a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. So I think Vrabel's got a good gig he's walking into. He's going to be well loved by the fans because of his time in New England as a player. I don't think, even if things go sideways a little bit this season, I don't think they're going to call for his head. I think they'll probably give him a few years
He'll get more grace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because of that, again, pressure, gotta be the best situation is Pete Carroll in Vegas. It's not because of the players that surround him. It's not because of the coaching staff. It's because he's walking into a place where the expectations are so dirt low that if he does anything, he's going to look like a hero. This is clearly not a long-term solution for the Raiders. This is clearly not like, oh, he's our guy and he's going to take us to the Super Bowl. No, this is a bridge piece. They're going to keep him for a year or two. And then when they find someone or someone other coordinator becomes available, they're going to go after him. So Pete Carroll is walking in with next to no expectations, coming off of a 4-13 season. If he gets them 6 wins, he's fucking hailed as a hero, you know? And on top of, with free agency going on, if they're able to land any sort of halfway decent quarterback, along with Pete Carroll, that gives them a leg up. They're going to win a few more games, and he's going to, that's going to set the tone for the future. So I think Pete Carroll's got it super duper easy to walk in and be mediocre at best and blow expectations out of the water. So I think, it's not the best situation in terms of pieces around him. It's the best situation in terms of they're not expecting much in Vegas, man. They just want 6 wins. And I think Pete Carroll is more than capable enough to deliver that. Like I said, assuming they get another, decent quarterback in free agency, I think Pete Carroll is more than qualified enough to help them, win a couple of extra games.
You mentioned Pete Carroll walking. This man will be 74 years old by the time the NFL season starts. You think his ass is going to be walking the sidelines at 74?
I do.
You think?
You just saw that video, 2 years ago of him fucking throwing passes to his wide receivers at training camp out there, like full on taking snaps. Yeah, but again, he was 73 at the time or 72, He's still out there throwing passes to his wide receivers. He's the youngest 74-year-old I've ever seen. That dude's got a lot of spirit. He's got a lot of gumption. I think, like I said, it's not the winning culture that he's going to cultivate. It's we're going to do better than last year, and with any luck, we'll set ourselves up for some better seasons in the next 2 or 3 years. And that's all they want from him. And if he can do that, he's succeeded by a mile.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it for today's podcast. So I want to just take a note to all you Raider fans out there that might be listening. You're striving for 6 wins. Congratulations. You got a Broncos team, a Bengals team. We're striving for playoffs. One day, maybe you'll be able to make a podcast, make a tweet out there that your team won a playoff game, but I don't think that's going to happen with Pete Carroll. You guys are still rebuilding, so calm down. Pete Carroll's not going to be your savior. Please go get Russell Wilson and pair with that, and you can have all that misery in the world. But we're going to be putting out some weekly episodes for y'all. We're out on X, the Omaha Turbo Pod. We're out on TikTok. We're out on YouTube. We're going to get you some audio-only files as well for maybe Spotify. We'll work on that as well. But we're looking forward to some weekly episodes. And if you want to tune in next week, we're going to do a little 2024 rewind. So we're going to take a look back at the NFL honors. Did we agree with the NFL Honor Award recipients? We're going to talk about the best plays of 2024, maybe the worst plays of 2024, as well as the best and worst games of 2024, which let's probably just go ahead and say this as a little spoiler. Our number one game is probably going to be the same. It was the Broncos and Bengals game.
So it was cinema. It was cinema. It was so good.
It will haunt my dreams of seeing, because I did it too in my basement when I watched the game before I saw Bo do it. Go for 2. Bo was doing it. So we need that Sean Payton that goes out there with the brass in between his legs of kicking an onside kick in the Super Bowl at halftime, which I know he can't do anymore in today's NFL, whatever. But we'll probably, of course, talk about that game. Maybe have a second one for you as well, so it's not so obvious what our best game will be. But thanks for watching. If you watch this whole thing, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, check us out on socials, check us out on our other areas. We love having you here. Thanks for listening, and we'll see y'all next time.